Come explore the depths of consciousness, where we raise the vibes and open minds.
Welcome to the Grounded Galactic Twins podcast. I'm Allison.
I'm Emily. Welcome.
Guess what?
What?
Chicken butt.
Bro. 6, 7. No, let's not start the podcast like this.
Jesus.
You broke the seal on that silliness, so that's on you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Welcome to our podcast. First episode we're shooting in 2026. You know what that means?
No.
We have been doing this for a year.
Wow.
And, we originally wanted to shoot for 2 episodes a month.
Yeah.
Life happens. So this is episode 15. So we got more than one a month. So
That's okay.
that's great.
Yep.
We have learned so much doing this podcast and we're still going. We're not going to give up.
Yeah, we are. Because guess what?
Yeah, we
We
are.
like this.
I said, we're not going to give up.
Oh.
And you said, yeah, we are.
In my mind, I'm thinking, we're not going to give up. Yeah, we are. Mhm.
Good save.
Yeah.
We're going to have some new things for you this year. You're going to see some differences that we're going to be doing with our program.
Oh, some differences.
Yeah. One of the main things that we're both excited about is one of our segments is going to involve basically pulling out some, I'd say, inspirational passages from books, nonfiction books that talk from, the gamut of self-improvement, Tony Robbins style, all the way to alien channelers, everything in between, because we like to expand your mind, but also remember that you're human.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I think one of the main goals here is to really honor the voices and the work and the knowledge of others that walk the earth and all the things we're capable of sharing with each other and under this larger umbrella of human evolution.
Definitely. We might be hitting the streets with some of our episodes and talking to people out in the public, maybe some social experiment type stuff, interview type stuff. We're really excited about getting out into the public with our message.
Or we're trying to help humanity evolve. So what better way than to get out of our own conversation and our own shell and out into the streets and then in the community and get some other perspectives, ask some questions, do some listening, hearing some stories, and helping people be heard, because that a lot of people I think aren't heard and would like to be heard. So let's jump right into it. We have some really interesting texts that we're going to share some passages from and have some reflection discussion. Allison is going to start with one of her texts. Go for it, sister.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that segue intro situation. The first text I have is called The Challenge of Contact, a mainstream journalist report on interplanetary diplomacy. Wow. So we're already going galactic with this. It is by Phillip Krapf. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. I will spell it for you. Krapf. This book was written, I want to say 2003. I'll look to verify. 2001. And at that time, he was a 25-year veteran at the LA Times. So this is a second book that he has written. The first one is related, and we're not going to go into all of the background of that, but let's just suffice it to say that this journalist was basically introduced to a civilization that he refers to as the Verdants, an alien civilization, where he was involved in, I'm just going to say, missions with them. And I haven't read book 1, but he talks about book 1 in book 2. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I've been reading it the last few weeks. And I will tell you that every night that I have read this book, after I have read it and gone to sleep, I have had crazy alien dreams every time I've read any snippet of this book. And that's kind of like my indication that his experiences must be real, just because there were so many things in here that I resonated with and connected with. So he meets a Verdant on the ship this time that he did not meet the prior time, and he calls him Martin. A little bit of the background of this is their original meetings and his original mission with them and all the other human ambassadors that they're called, or deputy envoys, are planning with the Verdant's contact with Earth and how that might go, and looking at a timeline and that sort of thing. he's gone up a second time, which is what this book is about, and they're thinking about postponing it. And he's really curious why. And this is what Martin tells him is what they're seeing from humanity and why they are deciding to postpone or thinking about postponing.
Postponing coming to Earth.
Coming to Earth, because in their minds, we need to be ready. It needs to be a more positive environment. The 80% of the world who's being controlled by the other 20% need to have sort of be more in power, already have changing systems, improving systems, taking over government and all of that. And they haven't seen that yet. But what they have seen is what I'm getting ready to read to you. That is, they're defining as the problems with Earth. Now, mind you, like I said, this was written in 2001. So the verdict says this: children killing children, a global pandemic of violence against women, corporate greed ravishing the world's resources for their own selfish ends with no regard for the disastrous ecological and environmental legacy they leave for future generations. The airwaves consumed by hate and narrow-mindedness, incivility of massive proportions, skewed values, and a loss of moral direction, apathy and unconcern for the less fortunate, rampant child abuse, the breakdown of the family, cruelty of all sorts, unconscionable terrorists killing and maiming innocent victims, third world nations that don't have the capacity to adequately feed, clothe, shelter, and provide medical care for their citizens, squandering their paltry resources on the development of nuclear weapons, ethnic cleansing, pedophile clerics, the resurgence of religious and ethnic hatreds and massacres, religious zealots who rant against government, but who would establish a theocracy to impose their narrow and tyrannical dogmas upon the populace, a sapping of the moral spirit, a malaise of the soul, psychotic militias, deranged cults, cultural rot embraced by millions who cheer choreographed violence in public arenas and idolize smutty radio personalities, the decline of sophistication and the celebration of mediocrity, medical clinic bombings, homophobic madness, racism, scapegoating, ...
Wow.
And then he said the list goes on.
It's gut-wrenching because when I'm sitting here listening to that, I'm just picturing all those things in my mind, and it's just one assault after another to consciousness and to our planet and to each other.
But it's no different from 2026. We still have these problems in all of these areas.
Well, is this the human condition? Because you mentioned something like the 80-20, implying that 20% of people are controlling the 80%, yet it seems with that list that closer to 100% of us are involved in one or more of these activities, whether through endorsement or by not standing up and advocating, not educating ourselves, not taking part in the change.
Blissful ignorance is a part of it as well, because people want to be comfortable in what they know, even if really to some other civilization, it seems a very uncomfortable way to live. I try to ignore the news, and I know some people would think that that's not the best way to approach things. But until we get a more balanced view of the world, the news just really stresses me out. And I don't want to think about our president 24/7 and the idiotic things that he's doing 24/7, because that's all that we see, and how ICE is shooting people constantly and, all the other negative things. And I'd rather focus on what can I actually feel like I can control in my life before I even start thinking about the massive world issues,
Yeah, I wonder if they would say in response to that something like, you've got to acknowledge the outrageousness of all these atrocities in order to ground yourself in your own individual evolution towards helping society. If you're invariably burying your head in the sand, how much good can you really do if you're not acknowledging really the full scope of these human atrocities?
I think part of it is, for me at least, that something that I heard from one of my teachers and mentors long ago is you never change the earth you're on. You always change yourself, and then you navigate to the earth that you're in alignment with. I would rather flow. I would rather, you know what I'm getting at?
I do, but is that what this race or species of alien is calling us to do?
No. No, they're simply pointing out that the current state of what they see in humans is this, and why would they want to interact with a civilization like that?
I feel like this has been our story throughout all of time. All of recorded human history, we hear about pedophile clerics, right? And the malaise of the soul and rampant child abuse. And now we are living in a society where we have some type of infrastructure for justice, meaning our government and the courts. Yet, of course, we see corruption up and down the board. And as new laws have been passed, like Citizens United, that say corporations are people, it just seems like those checks and balances and those safeguards and that infrastructure for justice and protection is just being eroded down to the ground. So what can we really do? Do you feel that this quote, 80% of people that are good, do you think that that's accurate? Do you think that there's that many people that are more good than bad and that need to take over the government, take over our systems to help spur this good evolution on our planet?
I don't know that I agree or disagree with any type of number. People talk about the 1% versus the 99%. I don't necessarily think a percentage is important. I think there's a momentum towards people finally realizing that we can't have change unless you make action towards that change. I think a lot of people understand that it probably does need to start with heads of companies as well as heads of governments and lawmakers and all of that. We've got to start somewhere. Even if you have 10 people that are, say, highly positive or highly vibrational resonant versus 50 people that are of a low vibrational resonance, then those 10 people can have a greater impact than those 50 people. It doesn't matter to me the number of people or a percentage. It's about the people that are more highly vibrating, if you will, who want a better society and can somehow make their way into making that happen. You know what I'm getting at? Like, I don't know. I see a positive momentum, I guess is what I'm saying. And that people are realizing that, especially in the US, and other generations can say it, but we're pretty much rock bottom, just about. And so some people have to hit rock bottom. Civilizations sometimes have to hit rock bottom before they start realizing that we need to do something about this and let's make our own way in the world. And what do we want that to look like?
I'm thinking of this American Civil War, that being, quote, a rock bottom, maybe not this rock bottom, but there are people today that would say we're sort of heading towards this other civil war in our country. I know me personally, I'd like to figure out how we can come together to offset that mindset and offset that danger. If we're thinking about it from the perspective of this alien race and the Verdants, I can imagine if they've been observing Earth for millennia, that they've seen this continued pattern. I wonder if they would tell us, has there ever been a time where we've seen kind of this inkling towards a better state of this Earth? I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's hard for me to wrap my brain around these conversations that these alien races are having with humans, that this is why we're not coming, because all these bad things that play out on our world and within the human species. But I just feel like all these things have been happening since the beginning of recorded human history. Where is the hope for any change? And we are living in a world of technology where many people, especially in the developed world, go to school, they read books. There is more knowledge. And now with the internet and our connectivity and globalization, we now know more about lots of things and other cultures. And yet still we have rampant child abuse and malaise of the soul and all of these really negative things that are obviously realistic. And for a race of entities looking at it from the outside in, yeah, we're not in a good state of being right now. So where's the hope?
I guess I would disagree with part of your statement when you say all of recorded human history, we've had these types of attributes. I don't think that that is at all true. And I think people are coming around now to we don't have a lot of our recorded history in the mainstream. It is difficult to find. It's out there, you know, watch the Discovery Channel, History Channel, any of the ancient alien shows. You see where I'm going at with this, but there have been civilizations of humans on the earth prior to, say, the Great Flood, or even after, pre-Egypt, the rise of the Egyptian civilization, which some people could argue that that was a much more positive civilization than now. So if we want to go even further back in time, you've got the Lemurians, the Atlanteans, and those civilizations where we did have open contact with interdimensional and extraterrestrial beings. And from what I understand from many different sources, not just alien channelers, but just lots of different people, and even some scientists who have seen the records, they've gone to the pyramids, they have access to things that we don't have access to or that have not been released, that at some point, like I said, we have had open, continual communication and a community with otherworldly beings. And we're in, say, councils, if you want to call it that. What's another word for council that I'm thinking of? Tribunes or something where lots of different civilizations, like a UN, okay, but of earth beings and verdant
a
beings.
galactic federation or something.
Right, a federation where there was interplanetary and solar system planning of your general universal area. And then at some point, humanity took a turn, whatever caused that turn, people can argue about all day long, but at some point we lost our history. We got kicked out of the Tribune, the Council, the Federation, and now we are trying to get back to that because, yes, humans are capable of that.
How do we get, if whatever that rupture was that happened, whether it was, let's say, a human person sitting on the Federation that royally fucked up, or let's say we in part fucked up because we didn't have the support of these more advanced otherworldly beings. And so now we're in the situation where we don't have that support, at least not explicitly. And I'm sure you would argue, Allison, that behind the scenes and with certain people and in certain times and places that, you know, alien races and entities still are in contact and trying to support and trying to nudge, but, you know, still we don't have open contact. I think what I'm trying to get at is how do we come out of that and, you know, join the Federation again? How do we, if in the scenario that we were only there in part because we were being supported by these higher level beings and we no longer have that support in that way, how can the Federation expect humans to reach that level again?
I still think that a lot of people's conception of the time humans has existed is very narrow. We have existed millions of years. They have existed gajillions of years and have not just humans on Earth interest, but a lot of other civilizations. So I don't know that necessarily our part in the participation with a galactic federation hinged a whole lot on having the support from others. I think it had to do with, as a human race, we were in our own bubble of high vibration enough to be able to participate. And we did that. And at some point, we, regardless of lack of or full support, whichever side you want to go on, over a long period of time, we lowered our vibration, we started losing morality or whatever caused that, because, I mean, who knows? There could be a myriad of reasons, but we're the ones who made the demise happen. We have to be the ones to bring ourselves back up out of that hole. Like, they're not going to come and take over and zap you with perfect health, perfect knowledge, and all of this type of thing. They want to see us do that. And they know that we can, because they've seen our history way, way, way longer than we can even fathom. They're just waiting for us to get there again. I mean, it's not, their investment is not just one human lifetime. It's hundreds and hundreds of generations of humans.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just thinking, yeah, and you may have read some things that help to kind of answer this question or just even have a conversation about this, but whenever this rupture happens, we started to lower our vibration for, like you said, whatever reason. What if one of those reasons was because there's some other race that is not benign that is influencing us in a wrong direction.
Sure, why not?
Is that something that's been talked about?
A more highly technologically evolved species can do that to any less technologically evolved species.
Okay, so then in my mind, logically, I'm thinking, okay, so if we were to raise our vibration and sort of overcome that negative influence on us, we have to be aware that it even exists in the first place. And so I wonder how that can happen without some other intervention from another race that is malevolent. Does that make sense?
That is benevolent, you mean?
Benevolent. You know what I mean? Like, how are we supposed to come to know that? And if we are under the thumb of some bad influence, how are we supposed to come out from under that thumb if we don't even know?
Well, I want to make this analogy. I think people will relate to it. So I was looking out my window the other day into the front yard, and we have this big tree right by one of our windows, and we have a lot of squirrels around here. And there was a really small squirrel and a really big squirrel. The big squirrel was just running around trying to catch that little squirrel. They're very territorial over here. And me, being the much more highly evolved being, was trying to help the little squirrel out. So I knocked really loud on the window just to kind of make them stop for a minute and be distracted. And then the little squirrel gets away. I kind of see it like that, where the malevolent big squirrel, which the little squirrel knows about, but let's say he doesn't. Let's say the little squirrel doesn't know why he's running for his life all the time. Doesn't see this invisible force, if you will. But me, the alien, the benevolent alien or otherworldly creature in this situation, knocks on the window and distracts the malevolent thing, that can still create change for the little squirrel. And the little squirrel never has to know anything about it to improve its life, per se. So I think there's an element of those benevolent beings are helping against the malevolent forces in ways we don't even know, because they care about us as a species. They want to see us grow and evolve, because it's kind of like you want the good to win out of the bad. And there are cosmic rules and laws, and it's kind of like the good has to enforce those onto the bad, if you want to say good and bad. So it doesn't matter if the malevolent species is screwing with humans or screwing with some other planet over here. There's, I believe, a level of protection that we are getting that's just not obvious to us. And we may not have to directly know about these malevolent forces. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about putting it in a context of God, or in the religious sense, and lowering our vibration, falling to earth, and there are evil forces that are influencing us, the devil speaking and whispering in our ear. Yet
Are you
there
trying to make me laugh?
No, I'm not trying to make you laugh, but that's what I'm thinking about, because to me, it's like a one-to-one analogy. You know, it's the same sort of story, if you will, and narrative.
Sure. Different characters.
I think, in my view, like, if I'm seeing it like that, and if that truly is the case, whether it's this religious God type story or this Galactic Federation and all these different types of species and beings story, I think the core theme is that, yeah, that does give me hope in that way, if that is true, if either story is true. Because we know from religion, right, the power of prayer. And we know from these books that we're reading the power of the brain and how we can change our lives, not just change our mind, but change our lives and change society just by doing some basic practices that we are as humans capable of, like meditating, practicing kindness, and growing our empathy, and being intentional, obviously, underlying all of that, being intentional to do those things for the right purpose. So what you said does give me hope. All that to say.
Cool.
So,
and the 3 R's. Don't forget about that. Throw that in there. Things the humans can do.
Oh, one of the things humans can do is engage in the 3 R's. And we've talked about the 3 R's before: reflect, realize, and revolutionize. So our conversations we're having, we're reflecting different topics back to each other. We're making realizations for ourselves. For mine, realizing that maybe there is hope. And we do still have a reason to move and work forward. And then revolutionizing our thinking, our actions, our perspectives, so that we can help humanity realize a better world.
I want to read from the second book that I have because I think this is a great segue into the positive side of highly evolved beings, which is where we want to all go as a species, right? We want to be more highly evolved. That doesn't mean more highly technological. People get that mixed up. Thank you to the 80s and 90s movies that we all saw of the future where everything was flying cars and robots. And I don't know if you don't remember, but no one was ever happy in those movies, in those civilizations, just because they had more technology. Okay. So the second book that I have, it's in the Conversations with God series by Neale Donald Walsch. What I'm getting ready to read from is in book 3. Some people call this channeled material. I would not disagree with that at all. People hear Conversations with God and they think it's a religious text. It is not. The first 3 books will absolutely blow your mind. The first book itself will blow your mind, but I suggest getting the 3-pack because it comes in one big book. I even tried to bribe my daughter and say, I will give you $100 to read that book because I think everyone needs to read it. So this is interview style. Neale Donald Walsch is asking God, God answers. It's Q&A. Okay. And this section is a little bit long, so I'll try to read fast, I guess, but he talks about, they had just talked a little bit about otherworldly creatures, but Neale asks God, well, you've talked about what he refers to as HEBs or highly evolved beings, and that God is aware of all civilizations that are highly evolved, lowly evolved, whatever, everything in between. And so Neale wants to know, what does that look like? What could that be for humans? What do they wear? What do they do? Blah, blah, blah. So this is God's sort of short explanation that he goes way much longer into it, but I'll just read the first response that he has to it. He says, in highly evolved cultures, beings see no need to be clothed because one of his questions was, what do they wear? Except when some kind of covering is required to protect them from elements or conditions over which they have no control, or when ornaments are used to indicate some rank or honor. A HEB would not understand why you wear total body coverings when you do not have to. He certainly wouldn't understand the concept of shame or modesty, and could never relate to the idea of coverings to make oneself, quote, prettier. To a HEB, there could be nothing more beautiful than the naked body itself, and so the concept of wearing something on top of it to somehow render it more pleasing or attractive would be utterly incomprehensible. Equally incomprehensible would be the idea of spending most of one's time in boxes, ... which you call, quote, buildings and houses. HEBs live in the natural environment and would only stay inside a box if their environment became inhospitable, which it rarely does, since highly evolved civilizations create, control, and care for their environments. HEBs also understand that they are one, the capital O, with their environment, that they share more than space with their environments, but also share a mutually dependent relationship. The HEB could never understand why you would damage or destroy that which is supporting you. And so you can only conclude that you do not understand that it is your environment which supports you, that you are beings of very limited observational skills. As for communication, a HEB uses as his first level of communication the aspect of his being, which you would call feelings. HEBs are aware of their feelings and the feelings of others, and no attempt is ever made by anyone to hide feelings. HEBs would find it self-defeating and therefore incomprehensible to hide feelings and then complain that no one understands how they feel. Feelings are the language of the soul, and highly evolved beings understand this. It is the purpose of communication in a society of HEBs to know each other in truth. A HEB therefore cannot and could never understand your human concept of lying. To be successful in getting one's way by communicating an untruth would be for a HEB a victory so hollow as to render it not a victory at all, but a staggering defeat. HEBs do not, quote, tell the truth. HEBs are the truth. Their whole beingness comes from what is so and what works. And HEBs learned long ago, in a time beyond memory, when communication was still accomplished through guttural utterances, that untruth does not work. And he goes on to talk a little bit about why we lie and things like that. But so there's kind of his small glimpse into a highly evolved being based on what Neale specifically asked in the question before. When I remember when I first read that, thinking, I would never want to be naked. Like, that's the first thing that kind of came to my mind. But
We all have to move closer to the equator.
I don't, I don't think that was the biggest thing I needed to take away from it. And look at the civilizations that are on Earth that we don't know much about, that are, say, in the jungles and are very isolated. They don't wear many clothes. They're very connected with the Earth. They're not inside all day long. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think, not that God is saying necessarily in this text that, oh, that's specifically a highly evolved being. I think what we're supposed to get out of this is,
This symbiotic relationship with the earth and our environment, right? And
right,
also shedding the ego in terms of things like shame or even,
and hiding things from people, hiding
Mhm.
feelings, lying.
Mhm.
It's self-defeating. It doesn't make sense because it's not at all free. Everyone wants to be free, right? How can you be free if you're lying and hiding and you feel this obligation to not be like you can't be your full self? And a highly evolved being would go, that doesn't make any sense. I want to be my whole self. Why would I be anything less than that?
Well, and that's how kids feel usually before they're fully indoctrinated. It doesn't make sense to me while you're telling me I can't say or feel this or do this. I just want to be free. So humans certainly are capable of that, but there's something that happens between childhood and adulthood that dampens that knowing down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought this was a good, I don't know, dichotomy. Is that a good word? I don't even know. I look up the definition. It was a good polarized view of a society compared to the first description of our actual society happening right now. Just to make you think. Because some people in their state of mind right now would not want to be in that category. They're not ready for that category. Things about it make them uncomfortable. And so you'd have to think about, why does that make me uncomfortable? I could never lie again, never hide my feelings again, never. And you have people on this earth that go, I never lie. That's a lie. Because people do it without thinking. They do it without realizing. And maybe a not outright lie, but they will censor themselves, filter themselves. They're still hiding the wholeness.
Well, and when you're in a survival situation, there are so many incentives to lie sometimes because if you don't lie, you might die.
Sure.
Nobody wants that.
No, nobody wants that. I just love these books, though. And I can't wait maybe for our next episode. I would love to pull out some religious things and how he talks about how religion was created and how humans created it and why. And oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. And I just think everyone should hear that perspective, just to either they can dismiss it or they can go,
Well, my thinking on that is it's a political tool, and that's why it was invented. That's what I've been hearing / reading.
they don't get it. They don't, he doesn't talk about it in a political sense, but it's for power.
For power.
Sure,
Right.
for power.
Right. Well, that's all very interesting. I hadn't heard that description of HEBs before, and I was listening for some particular things. I didn't necessarily hear them explicitly, but I think they're implied and tie into a couple of the passages that I'm going to read from a book called Buddha's Brain. It's by Rick Hansen and Richard Mendius. So this is a PhD and an MD, a medical doctor. Richard Mendius is a brain scientist, and so he's bringing that background into these larger conceptual things about how we can essentially train our brain to be like Buddha's brain, right? This all loving and all peaceful entity. I have to read just a quick passage from chapter 8, which is titled Two Wolves in the Heart. And it says, I heard a story once about a Native American elder who was asked how she had become so wise, so happy, and so respected. She answered, in my heart there are two wolves, a wolf of love and a wolf of hate. It all depends on which one I feed each day. And then later on he says, the story suggested that we each have the ability, grounded in daily actions, to encourage and strengthen empathy, compassion, and kindness, while also restraining and reducing ill will, disdain, and aggression. Obviously, we're very aware that humans are capable of feeding the wolf of hate or feeding the wolf of love, and what are the outcomes or manifestations of those behaviors. And they truly are grounded in our daily activities. How much we tip our waiter, whether they're giving us good service or not, I think speaks to that, what we're feeding. And that's one of the examples he gives in that chapter is this is an example of everyday kindness, giving a good tip, even if we're not being treated well ourselves. I wanted to, though, focus on chapter 10 because he gives some practical ways for us to enhance our kindness practice. The chapter is titled Boundless Kindness. He uses the term loving kindness a lot and how the word kind and kin share the same root. Kindness brings people into the circle of, quote, us and feeds the wolf of love. And how kindness depends on these different things happening in our brain. Prefrontal intentions and principles, limbic-based emotion and rewards, neurochemicals such as oxytocin and endorphins, and brainstem arousal. And then he gives some really practical things we can do to fire up those parts of the brain that are going to help us enhance kindness. So I'm just going to talk about just a couple of them, and maybe we can even do some of them right now on the air, even though you said this is not radio. We can maybe do some of them. The first one is wishing others well. And it essentially says one way to focus and express kind intentions is through these traditional wishes, which you can think, write down, or even sing. So one of them is, may you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. And so I wish all that for you. Allison, may you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. And the idea of that is to really feel what you're saying and have that intention behind it and not just be saying the words. Of course, he goes on to say you can modify these phrases to really invoke some stronger emotions and be specific. So one example he gives us, may you be safe from inner and outer harm. May your body be strong and vital, so on and so forth. And you can also be very specific. May you get a hit at Little League today, Carlo, is one of his examples. So wishing others well is one way we can actually train our brain to be more kind and have this, what he calls loving kindness practice. Another one of these is loving kindness meditation. And I'll read this paragraph because I like it. It says you can meditate on loving kindness itself. It has a warm feeling to it that is, quote, juicier than the breath, and thus for many people easier to keep paying attention to. One practice is to express your kind wishes as specific phrases, and then say them in your mind one by one, perhaps in rhythm with the breath. Or you can use the phrases more as a gentle guide, returning to them if your attention wanders. All the while, keep settling into the feeling of loving kindness, in which there is boundless goodwill, generosity, and cherishing. You can use loving kindness for deepening concentration. Instead of becoming absorbed in the breath, you sink into loving kindness. Meanwhile, loving kindness is sinking into you. I feel that's really lovely. And when I meditate, that is what I consciously try to do is usually I think of the word peace, but sometimes it's love. And it's more than just thinking about the word. It's thinking about the feeling that it evokes and focusing and maintaining that feeling. And really pretty quickly, when I'm doing that intentionally in meditation, it feels euphoric, like as though I've embodied that actual concept. I guess, I don't know, you would say embodying that frequency or
You're
that vibration.
matching the frequency. Yeah.
Right. And it's truly transformational. And I wish I could stay in that state all the time. I think one of the big takeaways from this book is that we can stay in these states. We can train our brain to be so attuned to these peace, love, kindness frequencies that obviously we can evolve and evolve society alongside our own evolution.
And
Just by teaching people how to meditate on loving kindness.
it has to start with intentionality. People want these things to come naturally. And if you're not trained from birth, it will not come naturally. So you do have to intentionally every day feed the wolf that you want to feed until it becomes second nature. A couple of things you said made me think of a few things. I don't remember exactly what it is you said when you first started reading, but when I think of loving kindness, I just boil that down to compassion. In my mind, that's my definition of that is kind of the same thing that you read. We do all have the two wolves. I think that's really important for people to understand and be okay with and accept within themselves. We were born with the two wolves. which means we always have a choice. Polarity will always exist. There may be some bad actors in this world who are choosing to feed the wolf that, what did you call it? The wolf of hatred? I forget.
The wolf of hate.
Wolf of hate. And maybe their purpose is for you to learn not to choose what they chose. And in some ways, maybe you should have gratitude for them, kind of thing, because you can't see the lightness without the dark. We've talked about that. When you were saying to me, may you have this, may you be that, it made me think of, I don't know exactly the quote, but it was something to the effect of, when you tell someone, I love you, you're not describing them. You're describing yourself. You're not saying to that other person, you are worthy of love. That's not what you're doing. You're always describing yourself, everything that comes out of your mouth. But when you say, may you this, may you that, even though you're projecting those well wishes onto the other person, you're also getting the benefit of those words, because you can't offer something that you don't have, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It just made me think of that. Like, when you give someone your last penny, you're helping yourself as well, because that feels good to you, right? You're helping someone. And when you help someone, do you not always feel good? Unless you're that type of person who's wanting to be the martyr and who constantly self-sacrifices, and you're only doing it for attention or recognition or to get something back, you don't feel good in those scenarios. But if you're coming from that loving kindness and that place of compassion, and you give someone your last penny or you give them well wishes, you get a benefit from that. You're not losing anything of yourself.
Yeah, I think all that makes sense. This polarity will exist. If we want to be happy and to find peace and to live a positive life and have these positive things, we have to intentionally choose feeding the wolf of love over the wolf of hate, and accept that the polarity exists. But we can exist on whatever end of the pole we want to exist. We can exist on the end of love instead of the end of hate. We know that the other end is there, but we can exist along the spectrum anywhere we want. And I want to read another short couple paragraphs from here. It's just another daily practice and something we can experiment with and help train our brains. It's called Kindness in Daily Life. It says, throughout the day, deliberately and actively bring kindness into your actions, your speech, and most of all, your thoughts. Try to encourage more themes of kindness in the mini movies running in the background of your mind in the simulator. As the simulator's neural networks increasingly fire with messages of kindness, that feeling and stance towards others will become more wired into your brain. Try experiments in which you bring loving kindness to someone for a specific period of time, perhaps a family member for an evening or a coworker during a meeting, and see what happens. Also act kindly toward yourself and see what that's like. So next time I'm going to go into the meeting with the person who I'm not the biggest fan of, or that maybe creates tension in meetings, or that I have some type of expectation that there's going to be conflict, practice just being kind to that person in that specific allotment of time. And wow, just even thinking about doing that feels powerful, right? Wow, I have the choice to do that. And guess what? I'm going to not be deterred by whatever possible negativity or conflict. I can go in accepting that might happen, but I don't really care about that. That my job is to enact and embody that loving kindness. That's all I can do, is to do what I can do. And I'll leave that meeting feeling good, feeling like I did something, feeling like I did the right thing. At the same time, am continuing to rewire my brain to do that in all situations, whether there's a potential conflict or not. I think
there's always an extra energetic element to it, because not only are they getting the benefit of someone being kind, but you're creating a frequency with that kindness, and you're giving them the opportunity to match it. Whether they choose, again, the two wolves, whether they choose to match that kind vibration or not is up to them. But you are emanating it, and they have the choice to match your energy or not match your energy. And that's a way to serve others.
It's all about free will and choice. And I want to read you just one more passage that ties in here. It's from another book by Bruce Lipton. Many people listening probably know Bruce Lipton, but the book is called The Biology of Belief, Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter, and Miracles. And it says, endowed with the ability to be self-reflective, The self-conscious mind is extremely powerful. Can observe any programmed behavior we are engaged in, evaluate the behavior, and consciously decide to change the program. We can actively choose how to respond to most environmental signals and whether we even want to respond at all. The conscious mind's capacity to override the subconscious mind's pre-programmed behaviors is the foundation of free will. What do you think about that? Our conscious mind's capacity to override our subconscious programming is the foundation of free will.
I think it all goes back to self-awareness. And that's a practice, just like meditation, that can open up this whole new can of worms of empowerment and more free will. You think you have it, but you have more once you start having awareness of that. So we're programmed from a very young age to not be self-aware and to be distracted and stay distracted and be overscheduled. And I absolutely believe that that's true, that any programming, subconscious or conscious programming, can be overridden, if you will, so that you can evolve in a more positive direction.
I think it's just all really good reminders of the power that we have as humans. And reflecting back on the first book and that list of really awful things that you read, there is such a dichotomy. Here's the correct use of the term.
Okay,
now.
awesome.
Because we have this manifestation of what happens when we feed the wolf of hate and what happens when we feed the wolf of love, and how we are capable of such awfulness. That's just obviously just a reflection of our capacity for the opposite end of the spectrum, and this just amazing expansiveness and positive consciousness. For myself, if nothing else, out of this conversation, what I am getting, what I'm going to reflect on, is when I see something that's just awful, when I see injustice, when I see poverty, when I can even observe my own mind and my own anger, and when I'm feeding the wolf of hate, I'm going to try my best to reflect on the fact that that exists only because the opposite also exists, and that I have the capacity and the capability to feed the wolf of love and to live that life of non-awfulness. I don't know how else to say it, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, you can always find the positive. You can always find the light in the dark, period.
Yeah, and I think what some of these texts are drawing us towards to recognize in ourselves that we can help ourselves through some of these daily practices.
Hey, I have a question.
Okay.
People have heard this whole feeding the wolves concept, right? What you read originally, like people have heard that. I'm so curious, why is it a wolf? And also,
I think it talks about
wolves,
that.
even if you're feeding a wolf love, it's still a wolf. And I think a lot of people see those as predators, vicious, angry. So to me, I'm like, why did they choose a wolf? Why isn't it feeding the wolf of hate or petting the puppy with love?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know. I've always wondered why it's a wolf.
If I were to venture to make a guess, I put wolf in the category of primal. Those primal things that are at the very base of our soul and our biology that make us capable of the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Yeah.
We went through a lot in that episode. I feel like honestly I could talk about,
Well, we haven't talked about our 3 R's.
Okay.
And then I was going to talk about one thing that you haven't even heard of yet, very briefly.
Oh, a surprise.
A surprise.
Okay.
So I think that we touched on it a little bit, and through the texts, we maybe made you think. We opened your minds a little bit. You probably have done some reflection just listening to this episode, thinking about your life and the lives of people around you and how society and humanity is in its current state. So we'd like to end with our 3 R's as a reminder, our mission, our 3 R's is our gift to the world. I can't even, I'm trying to say OUR. Let me tell you the 3 R's and why we think it's important. One of the reasons we started this podcast to begin with, and all the things that we do with this platform, is we want people to feel heard and empowered. And one good way to do that, we talk about meditation a lot, but to reflect. You will never get unstuck in your miserable life or however you're defining your life if you don't change it. You do have the power to change it, but people, they don't know how to go straight to action. And maybe you shouldn't go straight to action. You've got to reflect first. These are our steps that we suggest that people go through in any arena of their life, whether it's relationships, work, health, XYZ, is reflect. Okay, tell us about reflection. What do they need to do?
Well, in terms of reflection, I feel in my soul, when I practice reflection, I'm trying to consciously and intentionally get feedback from myself, my consciousness, and the universe and others around me that I'm willing and open to hear so that I can go to the next step, which is to make some realizations and really understand what needs to change.
And I think a lot of people can reflect easily by journaling, keeping a diary, talking to themselves, talking to yourself on your drive home, in the shower, whatever. Don't skip that reflection stage, like you said, because realizations is next. You will have these epiphanies that seem like they come out of nowhere. You'll have some great idea from reflecting that you'll realize about, and then that will segue you more easily into, holy shit, I never realized I could actually do this or that, but that could be a potential solution. That will take you into thinking about action steps that you can take so that you can, the third R, which is revolutionize your life. That's where the action part comes from. So don't jump straight to the last R. You've got to do your reflection time, give that as much space as you need, have your realizations, and then start thinking about how can I apply these realizations into action. And you're going to fail. You're going to do things wrong. Things aren't going to work out. But guess what? We can change things.
And as long as you're engaged in the process, that's what's important. And I want to reiterate that this is not, at least in my mind, a linear process. It may not even be cyclical. It's a back and forth, trial and error. We might be in the second R stage of realizing some things, and then we might need to go back and reflect some more to have more realizations. Then we're going to have some actions towards revolutionizing our lives. Then guess what? We can't stop reflecting. So we do have to kind of go back, go through the steps, go back if we need to before we go forward, and really just intentionally engage in the process.
And you don't have to be so broad that you have to think about overhauling your entire life in 1 year
You
or
don't have to
overnight.
blow your life up.
Focus on what's the one top thing or the two top things that I'm really stressed about, or I feel like I can't change or something, and do things in small steps and small segments, and you'll start to get that momentum that you can do this. You are empowered. You can start seeing things and being aware of things that you never were before just by merely practicing reflection.
Are there some universal things that all people can do regardless of the XYZ things they want to fix in their life, like health or money or job or family relationships? Are there some universal things that people can do to start engaging in that process? Being honest with ourselves, starting a conversation with ourselves that is honest. So it doesn't really matter what the issue is that we want to change per se. We really can't change anything unless we, are having those honest conversations with ourselves. So maybe that's our sort of gateway into beginning to reflect in a productive manner.
Yeah. And I think that goes hand in hand with not blaming others for all of your problems. Because if you think that you have to change others and those are going to be your action steps and revolutionize, you'll never get anywhere. You only have control over yourself, whether you like to believe that or not. You do not have control over your spouse, your kids, your parents, your coworkers, your boss, anybody, your neighbors. You don't have control over anyone or anything but yourself. So that's another part of honest reflection is, here's this terrible scenario that I'm in. Okay, maybe what did I do to contribute to that? Or maybe not so much contribute to it, but what am I allowing? What boundary haven't I set yet? How can I remove myself from that? Not how can I make the other person change or this or that or the other. So you've got to put all the weight on your shoulders and realize that, yes, you have the full power, but you also have to take responsibility.
And you have to have acceptance. And I'm thinking of a conversation I had recently with a friend of mine whose upbringing was rough. He wasn't very connected with his mother. He sort of felt abandoned by his mother. And many things have played out in his life that kind of go back to that root of not feeling that mother love and not feeling that unconditional love and protection and worthiness. And it's certainly shaped his identity, how he thinks about himself, how he relates to others. And I had a conversation with him recently about, there's no conversation today that can be had with your mother, nothing that she can say to you that's going to repair what has happened in the past. There might be opportunities for, future good things to happen in the relationship, but nothing can be done as far as the other person, the mother, saying this very perfect speech that just wipes away the trauma and the feelings and everything that's come from all the trauma and the feelings over time and how it's affected your life negatively. So you have to accept that that has happened to you. Acceptance is a foundation of a lot of our self-talk, especially when we're thinking about what has happened to us, the people who have wronged us, these people who may still be in our lives, and how do we interact with them? And realizing we have, like you said, a choice. We can set boundaries so that we're not re-traumatizing ourselves or putting ourselves in positions to be drugged back down.
I think this is a good point for me to sort of impart my wisdom on. If he were a coaching client of mine, what I might suggest he could do in the various 3R steps to help with that particular area of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So a practical application is, in order to sort of get through that to the other side of positivity, there's two aspects that I would have suggested to him, which one would be forgiveness is an extremely powerful tool. Forgiveness can come in so many different ways. It does not mean you have to walk up to the person and tell them, I forgive you. That is not what that means. You can forgive someone without ever telling them or talking to them ever again. And all that does is it releases the shackles from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can go about forgiveness in a multitude of ways, and we would talk about various options to do that. The second thing that I would suggest is, especially if it's a traumatizing thing, that person is still living and you're not sure how to approach it or ready to approach it. And maybe one day you would be, but a lot of people aren't ready to go, again, straight to that ripping off the Band-Aid. That can be sometimes counterproductive. So in order to perhaps build up to that, you're pretending to have a conversation. So an action step would be to write them a letter, never send it to them. Write an email, never send it to them. Put anything, a pillow, a stuffed animal, a picture of them that you have from childhood or whatever that you're looking at, and have a conversation with them, even pretending to be the other person on the other side of the conversation. So this is just an example of, you could do it so many different ways,
Mm-hmm.
but that is all in the vein of the 3Rs, because you're doing reflection by having a fake conversation with this person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have some realizations through that fake conversation, because you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and you have to put yourself in your past self shoes and your now self shoes. So
many shoes.
So many shoes, man. Yeah. Like, I think those are good examples of things that people can do that we're not just talking about it or listening to a podcast. It's something you can do. You can get out your pen and paper and you can write, and it can be a step towards that revolutionized life.
And I have to add this here, never be afraid if you're struggling, if you have the willingness and the intention that you want to go through those steps to reflect and realize and revolutionize your life. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to go seek out a counselor or a pastor or a wise person in your life that you trust and you love. We need help sometimes because there are so many blockages, or we just don't have the frame of reference or the language to use to tell ourselves to even begin that. So,
and I would suggest too, and this will be the last thing on this topic for me, is if you are going to ask for help, I would suggest that you choose somebody who's not just going to stroke your ego and tell you you're right about everything, and don't have I don't want to say play devil's advocate, but someone who's going to be able to give you appropriate constructive feedback. Yeah, challenge you a little bit, push you a little bit, just so you can kind of break out of that pattern of feeling sorry for yourself and self-pity. Because if you're just going to go to somebody who's going to do nothing but console you, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
You're not going to get any advice from them that will be helpful in moving past something or moving forward with something. They might be like limiting you and keeping you into that stuck.
Right. It's just that would just be another sort of
enabler,
self-soothing thing in our life. Some people use alcohol and drugs and things to self-soothe. Well, having that friend or counselor that only tells you what you want to hear and gives you comfort, that's another sort of form of self-soothing. So moving past self-soothing is, right, you got to do that through honesty and intention, and
It's uncomfortable.
it is uncomfortable, but that's where growth happens.
Growth happens on the other side of comfort. What is it? Who said that? Heard
Lots-
that so many
yeah.
times.
Yeah. Well, that was good. I learned some things on this one.
That was great. I have a surprise announcement.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
For our audience and for you. This is the first time you're hearing about this.
Oh, I'm scared. Okay.
You
What
don't
is it?
have to participate. I'm sure you
Oh.
would like to at some points, but I understand our schedules are different. So Grounded Galactic, as some of you know, is under the umbrella of Hartman Family Media. And under that umbrella, not only do we have the podcast, but we have started to publish books. And, like I said, we're going to be talking to the public, interviews. Maybe at some point we'll host our own type of events or do things. So we are developing this brand of helping humanity. One thing that we both had talked about when we first started doing any of this is how can we help our local communities? And so I had already thought that for every book that I sell, every unit that I sell, whether it's online or in person, that a portion of those proceeds will go to a local charity. And I have a few in mind. Definitely Women's Shelters is kind of at the top of that just because that's near and dear to me. But also I said for every unit sold, and I haven't exactly figured out the timing of it yet, but like 1 unit sold is 1 minute of volunteer time. So if I sell 100 units, then once that however many builds up, then I will volunteer that many minutes in my local community. And I would love to do this with you, Emily, if you'd like to participate in that number of minutes. But
Hell
I
yeah.
eventually on the HartmanFamilyMedia.com is the website where you can get both the Grounded Galactic and the Hartman Media side, which has the books and all of that. I'm going to create a donation page so people can keep up with. I want it to be fully transparent. Not that we're making a lot of money with the books or anything, but I want to show like where we're volunteering and where money is going for donations and things like that, because I think that it's important for me to give back. And I think that would be really fun to do
Yeah.
together,
I like
you know,
that.
so
That's good.
anyway, I just want to make an announcement. That's a new thing for 2026 that we're going to shoot for.
That's a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Word.
And I'll see how many units have I sold so far of the book. It's only been out like a month, but around 70 or so.
Mhm.
So far we got an hour. And I don't remember if I did it a minute per, I don't remember. I wrote it down somewhere, but
Mhm.
it needs to obviously be realistic, type of thing. So I just put an order in for 1,000 books. If I sell all those 1,000 books in the year 2026, that's a lot of volunteering time.
We're going to have to spread that out.
We're going to have to spread it out. We're going to have to get creative.
And spread it out among some other people as well, too. Maybe
Maybe,
they
yeah.
want to join
Like a
in
group
that effort.
cleanup at the park or, yeah, that'd be fun. I'm excited about it.
That's really cool. I like that. Good job.
Awesome.
Good surprise.
Love it. Meow.
Well, I guess that wraps us up. We've covered a lot of ground. We hope we've inspired you in some way or given you at least something to think about and reflect on. As always, you can visit our website. You can like our page, subscribe, do all the things we're supposed to tell you to do on social media. Hit the buttons, engage with our material. Give us comments and feedback.
Yeah, email us. You can reach us at groundedgalactic.com. You can send us a message there, or you can email us directly at groundedgalactic@gmail.com.
So many G's.
So many ways to get in touch with us.
Yes. Do we know anyone out there who wants to be our producer and get paid nothing for a while?
I still live in the central Arkansas area.
And work on our schedule, probably.
Oh, Lord. And if someone wants to lend us some high quality camera equipment, lighting equipment, that would be amazing as well. And we're
Right.
just putting some feelers out there.
Yeah, put it out in the universe and
We'll take care of it.
speak it to life, they say. So.
Absolutely. All right. Love it. Love y'all.
Whoa.
Love all of y'all.
Everybody. Love and kindness to all you.
Everybody.
May you be well. May you be healthy. May you love yourself a little bit more today.
Yay.
High five.
High five.